Welcome to a new daily top AskReddit video. Today's topic.
What's something that's normal to us now, that in 50 years people will look back on us as barbaric? Hopefully chemotherapy. It's the best we got in many cases to treat cancer, so I'm thankful it's an option, but basically you're putting poison in your body. In a similar thread to this one, someone described it as slowly killing yourself and hoping the cancer dies first. I have no idea what a better solution might possibly be, but it would be nice to have one for sure. Chemo was my first thought. They're already making improvements, using targeted chemo for some types of cancer. We have vaccines for HPV, and I think there's another vaccine being developed for other cancers. The biggest problem with cancer is that it's not one disease, so each one is going to need a different cure or treatment or vaccine. I'm hopeful, though. When I was younger, an HIV/AIDS diagnosis was a death sentence. Now we've got manageable treatment that makes it not so bad. Women getting procedures on reproductive organs without pain medication. IUDs and LEEP procedures. Just take a few ibuprofen, you'll be fine. Upside down face. Just a little pinch, you'll feel some slight discomfort. For-profit prisons and for-profit health insurance. Hopefully. For-profit prison is a thing. WTF? Where? I bet it's a USA thing. Multiple countries, US, Australia, UK, NZ, Mexico, and more. The way companies are using the internet and what it's doing to our brains. The constant garbage we consume on the internet and its long-term effects on our mental health. Second, what social media is doing to our children and teenagers is horrifying. It's bad enough for adults with fully developed brains. You would love Australia then. We just banned social media for under 16s. I think the use of single-use plastics for real. The amount of waste we create is crazy, like super barbaric. The future generations will probably be shocked that we didn't find better solutions sooner. We did. They were silenced and buried for profit. Unfortunately, only people with suicidal tendencies seem to be blowing whistles. Letting people die from lack of medical care because they're poor. As a corollary to this, extending people's lifespans while their life quality continues to deteriorate. It's hard to let go, but if you've been through it, it's also very hard to watch someone you love waste away in pain and misery just because you've been conditioned to think that extending life at all cost is the ultimate goal. We need to accept that death itself is not undignified, and we should let people end it on their own terms. Especially when the other option is just extended suffering. Had a whole unit on this in Sociology of Health class. ICU nurses by a large margin do not want to be resuscitated or put on life-extending machines because they see much suffering goes into it, both for the victim and the family. Over 90% of NFL players getting chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE. The NFL will be viewed like we view gladiatorial battles now. I wonder how many of them have it before they even get to the NFL. Repeated concussions seem to do a lot of damage to an adolescent brain. Probably all of them. Making it to D1 ball takes a lot of work and bonks to the head. I got some buddies that only played high school and clock in at 5 to 7 concussions. I've got 3 concussions under my belt, 2 from working in sports, 1 playing adult sports. I went from having an occasional headache to suffering from chronic migraines and short-term memory issues. I was almost 21 by the time I got my first concussion. 26 when I had my last one. 27 now. All I can say is that no matter the age, please protect your noggins. This life sucks. I lose my train of thought mid-sentence now. I'm currently on my heating pad and on several drugs because of a migraine. Wrapping a shitload of plastic packaging in a plastic garbage bag like 3 times a week and tossing it all in a pile where giant fossil fuel burning machines smash them into an enormous plastic and dirt mountain. I think the way we treat the environment will be something future generations look back on and see as barbaric. We've been very careless with pollution, waste, and climate change, and in 50 years, they might wonder how we didn't do more to protect the planet when we knew the damage we were causing. The good news is that we are doing better overall. It used to be much worse. One example is factories in my hometown in New England used to just dump everything in the river. It was so toxic growing up we couldn't fish or swim in it. People got leukemia, people got cancer from some of these factories that were not regulated. I agree we have a long ways to go though. If we do not regulate, greedy people will dump toxins and take too much from the ecosystem without replacing anything. The 1970s was when big strides were made, including the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, and the Endangered Species Act. Air quality is so much better than it was 50 years ago. I agree to an extent, but for the most part one feel like all we've done is just move pollution's visibility. Countries like India import e-waste and pour boiling mercury in open air to extract gold from the components. Those places have factories that do just dump whatever into the river. Then we have the audacity to turn around and say, yo, clean that up. The way my father bitches about environmental regulations really hit me the same way my grandfather bitches about black people. It's not hateful, just venting, but do try to think past yourself. Honor killings. This is frighteningly normal to some, believe it or not. Unfortunately, it's going to take a lot longer than 50 years. Hopefully child beauty pageants, but especially child marriage. The way those with suicidal ideation are treated. I am a suicide researcher, and the current laws and systems we have set up to treat suicide are archaic. Many of our laws that dictate how we treat these individuals are from the 70s, and treatments for suicidality really only started catching on in the last 10 to 20 years. However, the most common action for clinicians to take still is to hospitalize these folks, even though this can be extremely detrimental. We will view current systems in the way we look back at insane asylums. I'd really like to hear more about your research, and also your personal POV about this and euthanasia for PPL with serious mental health issues, if you're willing to share any of those. Victory hand light skin tone. I'd be happy to. Without revealing enough that I'd be identifiable, I roughly research how folks might never share their suicidal thoughts and behaviors with therapists or doctors because folks worry these clinicians might place a psychiatric hold on them, which in turn disrupts their already tumultuous lives, all while strapping them with medical debt. 60% of those with suicidality will never share it. Many training programs for clinicians and doctors unfortunately do not teach practitioners how to deal with suicide well, so clinicians will opt for hospitalization over treatments that have better scientific backing, just to be safe. In fact, there is plenty of evidence that folks who are hospitalized against their will have greater suicide risk after discharge than those who are not hospitalized or go voluntarily. In an ideal scenario, all treatment happens in a context outside hospitals where these clients retain their autonomy, rather than forcing them to bottle it up until it is so dire they can't conceal it anymore and they get hospitalized, or worse, they end up dead. The other opinion I strongly hold is that our field should teach suicide therapies in the same way they treat oncologists' cancer therapies. Therapists and doctors would do well to remember that these people have a disease and that it puts them at risk of dying, but that is all the more reason that we need to help them. We have an ethical responsibility to these individuals. Instead, many therapists act rashly because they don't have to interface with their patients dying often. Euthanasia is tough, but in some cases I'm honestly pro-euthanasia. Most cases of suicidality are pathological, and that is my opinion. It's controversial in my field, but there is a subset of those who want to die where it would be merciful for society to extend the option of death. Anyway, if you made it this far, you have discovered the risk of asking a researcher about their research. Forcing people whose disabilities prevent them from working to live in poverty. The average amount of a monthly Social Security disability insurance benefit check is $1,400. You can only get SSDI if you worked enough before becoming disabled. For people like me who didn't work enough to get SSDI, we get SSI, which is much less. I get a total of $700 a month. $630 from the feds and $70 from the state of Y. And they can't save more than $2,000, otherwise they will lose their benefits. Getting married can also do that. I'm sorry, what? If I'm frugal and save to build up a base and financial safety net, I lose my benefits. If that's not a huge red flag that the system is broken and not there to support the people but instead to support the wealthy benefiting from it, I don't know what is. You work to the bone 80% of your life, so here's 1/10 of that, but don't save too much or we'll take it all away again. I'm disabled and only get $975, it's worse than most people know. Keeping aquatic mammals in captivity for entertainment. If you feel that way, then why stop at aquatic? I think zoos can help serve as repositories for endangered species, until their habitat in the wild can be restored. I would like to see zoos be nothing but endangered species and rescue animals. They had some black bears at my local zoo that were rescued as cubs after their mother was killed and they were later deemed unreleasable. They also had an owl that was formerly wild but was missing a wing after it was hit by a car. Our meat industry. More broadly, the way we treat other animals. Not sure if it'll happen in the next 50 years, seems unlikely to me, but at some point, surely, factory farming will be viewed in sort of the same way we view slavery today. It's the kind of behavior that is so clearly inexcusable, torturing animals at a nearly unimaginable scale, except for the fact that it's so culturally ingrained. 100% factory farming and eating animals. Hoping lab-grown meat will be the norm by then. Not sure how this isn't the top answer. The way we treat other living creatures is insane. It's not the top answer because people like convenient, cheap meat and don't like to feel like they are being criticized as being part of the problem. Surely factory farming animals is the thing most similar to the barbaric actions of our past, torture, executions, chattel slavery, etc. Dude, we literally put pigs in what is basically a concentration camp and then gas them to death. Like literal gas chambers. I mean, not every factory farm does this, but it's becoming more common practice. Like 80% of the farms in the UK do this, and the one by me in South Africa does this. It's crazy to me. There's a Jewish man named Alex Hershaft, who's a Holocaust survivor, who, after seeing animals in factory farms, basically said that they're going through the same thing he did. It's like the Holocaust for animals, except it's perpetual. The cruelty with which we treat animals. This should be at the top. We are absolute monsters to every other living thing on the planet. Literally the monsters and psychopaths from our scary movies. Disappointed. How is this so low? Honestly. Animal agriculture, factory farming, fur, leather, animals in the entertainment industry. It's all so fucking barbaric, and yet we have alternative for all of the above.